Part 3. Test 1. Number 1. Dear employees, word has reached the fourth floor that some employees fear that because of economic hard times and service cutbacks, their jobs may be eliminated and they may become unemployed right before Christmas. Figures range from 10% to 35% of all staff, depending on which rumor you hear. While these are indeed hard times for our industry, management has no plans to cut off staff before the end of the year, or even during the first quarter of next year. Cost-cutting measures to counterbalance our financial downturn are currently underway and have been for some time. But you can be certain that they do not include any staff cuts whatsoever. If you are still concerned about the security of your job or this organization, please talk to your supervisor. We value all of you and the work you do. Eliminating your services would be our very last resort. Sincerely, Michael Dawson, Director of Personnel. Number 2. When her cousin Jess visited, Gloria couldn't wait to take her to Stylist Visions, a bright boutique filled with clothes and jewelry. Upon arriving at Stylist Visions, Gloria told Jess that she would love the shop and offered to help her choose clothes. 20 minutes later, they had toured the entire shop and a pile of clothes was waiting for them in the fitting rooms, including clothes Gloria had picked out for Jess. She thought that they would look great on Jess. Okay, Gloria said. Let's go and try them on. You'll look fantastic in that pink shirt. At that moment, however, Jess told her that she wasn't going to try anything on. What did you say? I'm not going to try anything on, Jess repeated. But you go ahead. I'll wait here. Gloria couldn't believe her ears and her spirits sank. Gloria realized Jess didn't like her taste. Gloria concluded that Jess had been quiet because she wanted to be polite. Number 3. New value creation is a leap of faith, and a high degree of failure is expected. If you study the most innovative companies you can think of, you will find that they have had more failures than successes, more misses than hits. How you deal with failure is the main feature of an innovation biome. No one knows beforehand what will work or be successful. So you need to expose yourself and your customers to a breadth of ideas and solutions. The business model of an innovation is uncertain, and while we might attempt to reduce this uncertainty, innovation needs to run freely and with flexibility. Companies should not assume they know whether an innovation will work, how it will be used, who exactly will use it, or how it will be monetized. All of these variables need to be fluid, and the organization must be ready for change. Rigidity in any of these aspects is the antithesis to value creation. Number 4. As irritating as it is for an individual to go to all the effort to get a competing offer, let me explain why that is such an effective strategy. Appraising an individual's value in the workforce is a very difficult proposition. There isn't an exact amount that is universally fair to pay any given job title. There are too many variables. Therefore, companies do their best to determine competitive pay through salary surveys or other data, but it's more of an art than a science. The best way to appraise worth is similar to how you appraise a house. One of the best indicators of home value is to see what other houses have sold for. When you have other competitive offers or bids on a home, it sets its value in the market. The more unlike other homes, the more difficult it is to appraise. The same is true for employees. The best way to establish value is to see competitive offers. Number 5. Schools tend to structure outdoor learning, indeed just about all learning, around an age-based framework, unless, of course, school numbers encourage mixed-age classes. Recent research in Australia has found that mixed-age grouping helps children develop social, cognitive, and language skills, with children engaging in more mature and complex play. Children will naturally mix with children of different age groups at playtime, outside on the school field or playground. Perhaps we should reconsider the idea that learning outdoors simply involves taking a class outside, and instead view it as how a school supports the social and cognitive opportunities of mixing classes and age groups to learn in a wide range of environments. Should Forest School be restricted to your school's Year 1 class? Why not take a mix of classes with some pupils from each year? Perhaps our outdoor experiences as teachers can be the foundation to challenge many accepted notions of what education should look like. Number 6. Today, children in early childhood education centers have access to computer games, even though the children are often restricted in their use of such games. Naturally, it is the oldest children in early childhood education centers who tend to play such games the most. The games are often very simple and may well include some aspect of learning. Children growing up today meet digital technology early, and it becomes a natural part of their personal promotion. Often a program is peppered with songs and music and is a form of entertainment. Hence the word edutainment, which is sometimes used for this. Some computer games help to develop fine motor skills using the fingertips and require cognitive skills in order to find a solution to a challenge or a task in relation to a menu. Accordingly, this means that the child needs to know or learn the codes in order to be able to make the game work by choosing from the menu. Number 7. A few years ago, I took a group of restaurateurs and hoteliers to visit a number of restaurants in Rochester, New York. At our first stop, a major burger franchise, members of our group were pleasantly surprised to find a vase with a bouquet of flowers in the ladies' washroom and a small plant in the men's room. We had 35 people in our group, but as we ordered our food, the staff remained polite and welcoming, took the food order expediently, and put up the orders promptly with no mistakes. All of the group members were surprised to see such service and hospitality. Though we never met him, this restaurant owner expressed hospitality and service to us. No corporate policy required plants and flowers in the washrooms. Instead, the independent franchisee personally saw to it that this particular burger restaurant was memorable. Number 9. Rebecca L. Crumpler was born in 1831 in Delaware and died in 1895 in Fairview, Massachusetts. She is known as the first African-American woman to earn a medical degree in the United States. She was raised by an aunt in Pennsylvania who cared for sick neighbors, and this may have affected her career choice as a physician. In 1852, she was working as a nurse, but in 1860, she was admitted to the New England Female Medical College in Massachusetts, where she graduated in 1864. Crumpler challenged the prejudice that prevented African Americans from pursuing careers in medicine. Although little has survived to tell the story of Crumpler's life, she secured her place in the historical record with her book of medical advice for women and children. Crumpler practiced general medicine in Boston for a short while before moving to Richmond, Virginia, after the Civil War ended in 1865. Living in Richmond gave her the opportunity to care for freed slaves who would otherwise have had no access to medical care. Number 12. It is obvious that any significant achievement occurs only where the self attributes intrinsic pleasure to the pursuit of knowledge. Students may pass courses, but little of the information learned from the reward of great incentives will be stored in long-term memory. When the rewards cease, so does the motivation to remember, which is why the vast amount of information learned is lost within weeks. In one study on math games, children's performance was compared between a reward program and the follow-up during which no rewards were provided. The reward program did initially produce more interest, and the children played more. However, those who initially had enjoyed the games lost interest during the follow-up and played less after the reward program ended. The researchers determined that it was the reward program that caused the children to like the games less. Related research should cause us to think about what we do to the minds of children in an obsessive grade competitive educational system. Number 13. By giving an alarm call, a babbler tells the predator that it has been spotted. Once it has been spotted, the predator's chances of launching a successful attack are low, as the babbler can now seek cover. Many species, from lizards to kangaroo rats, warn predators in this way. What keeps the signal honest, guaranteeing its evolutionary stability? Why don't babblers emit these calls at frequent intervals, just in case there happens to be a predator around? One reason is that the calls don't always deter predators. They simply lower the odds of an attack. If the prey has already been spotted by a predator, giving the call is worthwhile. But if the prey hasn't been spotted, then it just made its position known to any predators nearby, and since it doesn't know where these predators might be, its chances of escape are low. As a result, prey have an incentive to give the calls only when they have actually spotted the predator, making the calls credible. Number 14. The theory of comparative advantage was first proposed by David Ricardo in 1817, when he demonstrated the idea by examining wine and cloth production in Portugal and England. Both commodities could be produced in Portugal more easily than in England. However, the relative cost of production of the two goods differed within each country. In England, wine production was extremely difficult, but cloth was readily manufactured. It could therefore be said that there were high opportunity costs for England to produce wine, and it was better to focus on cloth making. Although in Portugal it was easy to produce both commodities, there was a comparative advantage in concentrating on the production of a surplus of wine to meet England's demand, and trade it for English surplus cloth. Specialization enabled economies of scale to be secured, and investment meant that a high-quality product could be delivered. England also benefited from the arrangement because, while the cost of its cloth production remained the same, it enjoyed access to a supply of wine produced more cheaply than was possible at home. Number 15. Sports, by their very design, are highly structured. They involve institutionally defined rules, giving rise to a hierarchical authority pattern, and are often so over-regulated that they seem only nominally related to play. Although it is commonly said that athletes play sports, the rules and customs that control the behaviors of athletes often distance sports from the domain of play. Sports represent the formalization of play, with every move closely examined and subjected to rules and rules interpretation by game officials and league administrators. The participants of sports, athletes, owners, trainers, etc., have an investment with the games they play. Their very livelihoods are dependent upon success in the sports world. Generally, the investment aspect of sport outweighs the recreational, playful aspect of the game itself. Thus, as Edwards noted decades ago, sport is often anything but a diversion to its participants. In fact, for many participants, it is sport that produces the primary stresses and strains in their lives. Number 16. In a documentary film released in 2004, psychopharmacologist Candace Pert retells a story about the conquistadors in Montezuma. The story, a reportedly factual account, essentially states that when the Spanish galleons approached, they were invisible to the Aztec people. The reason was simply that the Aztec had never seen ships of that nature. When the Spanish approached the shore with their helmets on their heads, what the Aztec perceived were gods with golden helmets reflecting the sun as they walked on water. The Aztec welcomed them as gods, and of course everyone knows what happened. According to the story, it took several days of just staring at the water where the Spanish arrived for one of the Aztec scholars to finally see the ships. Arguably, this story illustrates how we fail to see what we see, either because of psychological defense strategies and or the inability to see what is not already in the mind to see. Number 17. The basic aesthetic elements of cinema may be summarized as visual composition, lighting, movement, color, direction of action, editing, sound, dialogue, sound effects and music, and special effects. These elements of film craft may represent aspects of actual subjects in the real world, but they may also embody subjective perspectives communicated by the filmmaker. For example, the angle of a shot may make a subject appear more or less powerful, and a long take may convey a deeper sense of continuous reality than a series of quick cuts. Sound effects recorded in post-production may add realism and emotional attachment to footage shot in the field without sync sound. Adding a musical soundtrack may lend an emotional tone to a scene, reinforcing the message of the imagery. even in direct cinema, the most pure mode of documentary style, which often relies on long takes and neutral camera angles, the filmmaker still makes decisions about where to put the camera, when to move it, and when to make a cut. There is no avoiding the conclusion that, as an art form, cinema molds its own reality as much as it presents that of the world. Number 18. The term big data can be used to talk about the analytic techniques used to extract useful information from the massive amount of data making up our digital form of life. Over the last several decades, our analytic methods for information extraction have increased in sophistication, along with the increasing size of the data sets we have to work with. And these techniques have been put to a mind-blogging variety of uses, from Wall Street to science of all sorts. A simple example is the data exhaust you are leaving as you read these very words on your e-reader or tablet. How much of this book you read, as well as the digital notes you take on it, is commercially available information, extracted from the trail of data you leave behind as you access it in the cloud. Major online bookselling retailers use this sort of information to further target the types of products they market. Number 19. Recently, when devastating wildfires caused widespread destruction across parts of the Pacific Northwest region of North America in the summers of 2018 and 2020, news organizations predictably focused on both the human dramas created by the blazes and the climate change angle. The latter is treated as the sole worsening factor for the increase in fires. To be sure, climate has been a considerable factor. Somewhat cooler, wetter weather, which is more recently the norm in the Northwest, does not result in uncontrollable fires of that scale. But an important component of that story was largely bypassed in the rush to drama fueled by the emotionally charged climate change angle. Those fires are also the result of poor forest management practices for over half a century. Decades of suppression of naturally occurring and regenerative wildfires have resulted in weaker, diseased, and more combustible forests. That combined with widespread clear-cutting of more fire-resistant old-growth trees and their replacement with second-growth species has also greatly contributed to the blazes. Number 20. Energy democracy is based on the fundamental principle that energy production must not harm the environment or people. This seemingly obvious proposition comes with a radical outcome. Planet-killing fossil fuels must be left in the ground. But it is not enough simply to switch to wind, solar, and tide-based renewable energy sources. This is not, in other words, simply an issue of technological innovation, as the shift of renewable energy is so often represented by mainstream commentators. Advocates of energy democracy insist that everyone should have sufficient access to renewable energy sources. Since the free market is notoriously unconcerned with such questions of equal access, energy democracy thus also implies that the means of power production must be socialized and democratized. This involves conceptualizing energy as a form of public goods rather than, as at present, a commodity produced by for-profit entities. This shift makes sense since the new forms of renewable energy are predominantly produced in decentralized forms, making collective ownership of the means of production the most sensible way to regulate them. and to shift power to community and grassroots organizations. Number 21. Some groups of humans have been genetically isolated from the rest for a long time. It has been argued that the San from southwestern Africa have been largely isolated for more than 100,000 years. However, San culture shares with humans across the globe all the basic features that I shall associate with educability. Like other groups, they have origin myths, deities, and stories about their deities, which all involve complex belief systems that individuals acquire from others. They also have sophisticated knowledge that enables them to survive in their desert environment. For example, they traditionally hunt game using arrows poisoned by extracts from the roots of rare desert plants. This hunting technique must have been difficult for an individual to invent, given that it uses knowledge that would be challenging to learn from experience. Once invented, however, it is easy to pass the technique down from generation to generation. Number 22. In a free society, every man is a self-owner. No man is allowed to own the body or mind of another, that being the essence of slavery. This condition completely rejects the basis for a law of defamation, i.e., libel, written defamation, or slander, oral defamation. For the basis of outlawing defamation is that every man has a property in his own reputation, and that therefore any ill-intended or untruthful attack on him or his character, or even more, a truthful attack, injures his reputation and therefore should be punished. However, a man has no such objective property as reputation. His reputation is simply what others think of him, i.e., it is purely a function of the subjective thoughts of others. But a man cannot own the minds or thoughts of others. Therefore, I cannot invade a man's property right by criticizing him publicly. Further, since I do not own others' minds either, I cannot force anyone else to think less of the man because of my criticism. Number 23. Depending upon the historical era, the political context, and the emergence of fashionable theory in criminology, different philosophies of punishment arise and become dominant, although never exclusively so. For example, during the 1950s and the early 1960s, rehabilitative philosophies predominated. The more conservative era of the 1980s revived a punitive model of just deserts. However, during the 1960s, retribution was not abandoned. Neither was rehabilitation absent in the 1980s. The major concern of the philosophy of punishment reflected the dominant correctional ideology. While ideologies and their constitutive philosophies change over time, few are ever totally abandoned, and newer versions of thinly disguised old ideas may gain renewed currency and popular acceptance. The late 20th and early 21st century have seen a reversion to harsh punitive philosophies, as exemplified in the wide use of the 3 strikes and you are outlaws, and the increase in the use and widespread acceptance of the death sentence. Yet the same period has welcomed a victim and offender-centered approach called restorative justice that aims to reintegrate offenders back into the community and correct the harm of those offended. The philosophy of punishment reflects the prevailing correctional ideology of the time, but it does not completely reject old ideologies, as shown by the coexistence of punitive and restorative approaches across different eras. Numbers 24 and 25. Although animals devise a wide range of tricks to deceive their peers, they more often cheat by a much subtler means, free riding. That is, putting less effort into a group project than the other members of the group. For instance, many young birds help their parents raise younger siblings, a behavior estimated to occur in 3 to 8% of bird species in the world. Helping allows young, inexperienced birds to learn critical survival skills, especially when they themselves are not yet ready to strike out on their own. Helping also benefits their fitness indirectly because they share, on average, half of their genes with any of the chicks in the nest. This aspect of evolution is known as kin selection. However, just as a half-full glass can be seen as half empty, so too are shared genes. A 50% genetic similarity can also be seen as a 50% genetic difference. This is why there is conflict as well as cooperation between the helper birds and their siblings. For this reason, helpers may not pour their full effort into this communal reproductive enterprise. In carrion crows, for example, as many as 27% of helpers are sluggish workers, contributing less effort than they can toward helping raise their siblings. But if the dominant breeders are removed, these lazy helpers will immediately increase their efforts in feeding the chicks. Clearly, they can be quite competent in food provisioning when they have to. They are by no means born lazy. They simply avoid their duty when they can get away with it. Numbers 26 through 28. Emma started her car and drove towards the parking lot exit. A couple in their 30s had walked in front of her car, and as she watched them pass, she noticed the woman was having difficulty walking, and she was struggling with her groceries. Emma put down her passenger window and yelled for them, but they did not hear her through the wind. She beeped her horn and waved to them. "Would you like a ride?" she yelled. The woman touched the man's arm and told him that they had a ride. They both got in with 6 bags of groceries. "Thank you so much. You really saved us. You are an angel," she said. Emma asked them where they needed to go, and she started driving. They each thanked her about 5 times. Then the woman said something that touched Emma so much she could feel it in her heart. She said, "My leg is really bad, and I'm always supposed to use my cane. That cane really gets in the way when I carry groceries, so I left it behind today. My leg hurts so badly. You don't know how much this means to us." The man said, "We have to eat, so we just do what we can. We will never forget your kindness." As Emma pulled into the parking lot of their apartment building, she asked them if she could help them carry in their groceries. They refused her offer and said that she had done enough already. Emma watched them walk towards the building. The man was carrying 5 of the bags, and the woman was carrying 1. She was walking with great difficulty from side to side. It was the same walk Emma had noticed outside the store. She assumed that she was struggling because of the heavy groceries and strong winds. If Emma had not given them a ride that day, she never would have discovered the real reason that she was having such a tough time walking. She left her cane at home so she could carry her groceries.